Good day, everyone, and welcome to another Live with Kevin today on a Friday. And wherever you're located, it's morning for me, but wherever you're located, I'm so glad that you're with us. And since you're here with us live, or well, actually, if you're here with us live, I have a favor to ask you, and that is for you to go into the comments, whatever social platform you happen to be on right now, and say hello. Tell us where you're located. So Lisa, who you'll meet in a minute, and I sort of know who's with us because we can't see you. You have the advantage. You can see us. We can't see you. So tell us hello. Tell us where you're from. And while you're here, I want you to get the most that you possibly can out of this, which means I want you to imagine that you're joining us for a cup of coffee or water or whatever it is that you might be drinking at this particular time of the day. And so if you were with us and we were all around a table, if you had a question, you'd ask it. If you had a comment, you would share it. If you had an idea, you would also share that. So I hope that you will do all that, just like if we were in physical proximity, because if you do that, you'll get more out of this conversation. It'll be a better conversation for everybody, and then eventually a better podcast episode as well. So if you didn't know that this will eventually be on the Remarkable Leadership podcast that you can see up above my shoulder, which I realize right now I put up the old branding, so I will get scolded by my team that I have the old branding up there, but it's still the Remarkable Leadership podcast. And if you know that, now that you know that, it's eventually will be on there. So I'm going to start the podcast itself here in just a sec. Okay. So, but before we do that, real quick, in September the 20th and 21st, we'll be hosting our virtual LeaderCon for the fourth year in a row. This year, a 2-day live event where if you like the conversation we're about to have, you will love Virtual LeaderCon, which brings me together with 11 experts in longer form conversations with lots of opportunity for our participants from around the world, the community, to participate as well. You can learn lots more about it and sign up for free by going to virtualleadercon.com. So all of that being said, now I'm going to do the countdown for the podcast. Marissa, we're going to start in 3, 2, 1. How would your world be different if you had more confidence? How would the results of your team change if you all had higher levels of confidence? Confidence is our topic today, not surprisingly, and I believe that it is the most underappreciated component of our achievement, success, and results. So I'm super excited for today's conversation. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you're listening to this podcast, you could have been with us live, or you could, for future episodes, be with us live on your favorite social media channel, and you can get access to know when those are happening and how you can join us by joining either our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn. Today's episode is brought to you by our annual virtual LeaderCon, where you can interact with live many high-level thought leaders, just like you get the chance to listen to on episodes like today. You can learn more and sign up to join us for free September 20th and 21st at virtualleadercon.com. If you're hearing this after September 20th and 21st of 2023, be not concerned, because you can still go to virtualleadercon.com and learn more about how you can get access to this year's content, past year's content, and be on the list to know about next year's as well. virtualleadercon.com. Today, our guest is, I'm going to bring her in right now. Here she is.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Lisa.
Good morning.
Now let me get her intro back up here, bio for you. Lisa Sun is the founder and CEO of maybe my favorite company name ever, Gravitas, a company on a mission to catalyze confidence. Gravitas offers innovation, size-inclusive apparel, styling solutions, and content designed to make over women from the inside out. Prior to founding Gravitas, she spent 11 years at McKinsey, where she advised leading luxury fashion and beauty brands and retailers in the US, Asia, Europe, and Latin America on strategic and operational issues. Her first collection was featured in O, the Oprah magazine, People, and the Today Show in the same month. She and Gravitas have been featured on CNN, in Forbes, Fast Company, and many other magazines, including ones that no one here's ever mentioned to me before on the podcast, Elle and In Style and others. She is often called, get this, the dress whisperer, also a first on the Remarkable Leadership podcast. She's a highly sought after speaker who likes to impart her hard-won knowledge on gravitas and how to harness it to other women. She is the author of the forthcoming book, at least as of this live conversation, Gravitas, the 8 strengths that redefine confidence. She is our guest, and I'm so glad that she's here. Lisa, thank you for joining us this morning.
Kevin, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is awesome. So we get books in the mail all the time. Sometimes we have requested them. Sometimes they just show up. And when I get this book in the mail with this beautiful black cover and the title of Gravitas, I said, I got to look at this. And when I did, I said, well, this book, is really, and from the introduction, people probably get the picture that your focus is on women. And yet everything that's here is applicable to all of us. And that's really where we'll go. We'll talk a little bit about the men and women piece before we're done. But why gravitas? Like, I know the story because I've read the book, but sort of how did your life lead you to this work and even this word?
Yeah, well, I started at McKinsey & Company in September of 2000. And about a year after I was a business analyst, I was sitting in my first professional review, and my boss literally was walking through the review, and the opening line was, "Lisa comes across as young and overly enthusiastic at times. She should seek to have more gravitas." I didn't know what the word meant, Kevin, right? This was kind of I had to go LIU, look it up in a dictionary. And it said dignity, importance, depth of substance. Now you have a copy of the book. There's a photo of my McKinsey ID badge. Let's look at that photo. I got no gravitas, right there. It's very clear that I was not.
I could show it to those, but it's just not going to show very well. But there it kind of is.
I was, by the way, companies should warn you that your first day ID photo badge stays with you for 11 years. I went every year to IT to try to get them to take it down and put up a new one. But when I went and asked her, I said, how do you get gravitas? She said, go buy a new dress, wear big jewelry and great shoes. And that is fairly offensive feedback if you're making $43,000 a year, size 18, 20, and it stumped me a little bit. I said, why? And she said, you know what? Actually, let me tell you what the real feedback is. When you wake up every morning, you're the first person you have to look at in the mirror. And you have to like yourself. I can teach you how to be good at this job. I can't teach you to believe in yourself. Dumbo did not need a feather to fly, but it reminded him that he could. And I love that message that gravitas is not about an outward expression necessarily, but it's about what you believe about yourself on the inside before you even take on the day. And that's where our mission statement as a company comes from, that we catalyze confidence. Through our products, our content, we remind people of why they should believe in themselves.
Yeah, I love that. I'm actually going to read something from the intro portion of the book, and then if you want to comment on it, you can. But I think it sets the tone for where we're headed. You said, "I want women to turn moments of self-consciousness into bursts of self-confidence." I love that line. "I want women to understand that strengths that underpin their self-belief can come in many versions, extroverted or introverted, reassuring or swaggering. Sometimes confidence can even come from making other people look or feel good, from letting others shine." So anything you want to add to that lovely line?
Kevin, I'm glad you like the writing. I had a great collaborator, Catherine Huck. Give her a shout out because I could not have written this book alone. One of the things that we realized is we're born fully self-confident. Ask any 5-year-old what they're the best at in the world, and they'll tell you right away, I'm the best at soccer, I'm the best at hugs, I'm the best at everything.
I'm going to be an astronaut and the president at the same time.
It's true, right? When you're 5, you have ultimate self-belief. There's nothing that your inner child didn't think was possible from a potential standpoint. But through our adolescence, we experience setbacks, disappointments, we start to see flaws. And so most of us every day as adults are living in a deficit mindset, right? Where we see weaknesses over potential. And one of the things that I felt very strongly about is if you look up the word confidence in the dictionary, it has nothing to do with outward behavior or swagger.
This has anything to do with the better dress and the high
Yeah,
heels and the right.
it's an understanding and appreciation of your own abilities. And so part of the reason we went on this journey to write this book is we want to reset the definition of confidence, not to be about swagger or behavior, but to be about a choice and a mindset. You have to choose to be confident as an adult. And once you've made that choice, it's more authentic if you take an inventory of your strengths. And those strengths don't have to play into society's standards. And I think that's why we said it can come in so many forms where the source of your self belief comes from.
So you're hinting at sort of where I want to go with our conversation. And one of the things you say early in the book, which I thought was sort of profoundly true, is that our view, meaning society's view, and I would say the West, but probably everywhere, but certainly the West, that our view of confidence is incomplete.
Mm.
So first of all, what do you mean by that statement? And then why does that matter?
Well, let me start off by saying when I was 12 years old, by the way, I was a freshman in high school at 12. I had a tiger mom before tiger moms were a thing. And I joined Toastmasters in order to do speaking competitions to pay for my college education. I realized I wouldn't be able to afford my fancy education. So I enrolled and did Rotary Club, Lions Club speech competitions. And they gave me Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence Other People. Changed my life. By the way, Eastern culture does not value swagger, right? We're more about high achieving, self effacing. And Dale Carnegie taught me how to operate in Western society. Smile, shake hands, learn people's names, right? All behavioral. But what I
Important.
all very important. But what we've
Incomplete.
uncovered is that's only 2 of 8 forms of confidence that you could have. And what's interesting is I think we're sitting in an exciting time where we can expand the definition of be confident. The example from the book I use is in 2013 when Janet Yellen was nominated to be the first woman head of the Federal Reserve. All these articles about how she didn't have the gravitas to lead the Fed. And Ezra Klein at the Washington Post called out the naysayers. And he said, it's because the pervasive view of gravitas doesn't stretch to include her. She's more soft spoken, she's collaborative, but she's the most qualified for the job. Why isn't that gravitas too? And so when we talk about gravitas being incomplete and outdated, I want to redefine the word that it's not just about speak up and be assertive, but it's about, wow, I can be giving. I can be the smartest person in the room. There are all these other traits that can lead me to being very strong and having self-assurance.
I think that's right. And so I think when we tie it, I mean, what I was drawn to from the title of the book before I even opened it, before I even decided that eventually we would be having this conversation, is the connection between gravitas and confidence. Which is, when I opened before I introduced you, I opened the show talking about that word confidence, not the word gravitas, because it's interesting. Because I did a session for a group of leaders in senior leaders in an organization a while back, and they wanted me to talk some about gravitas, as it turns out. And someone said, "I don't know what that word means." And when I read it in your book, I thought, okay, he wasn't the only one. So one of the things you talk about early is what you call the 3 C's, and I'd like you to connect those, because we'll get to the strengths. You sort of talked about the sort of the 8 ways we could define confidence in a sec, but underpinning that are these 3 C's. So talk about what those mean. And why they're important to us.
Well, and I like that you made the distinction between gravitas and confidence, right? Confidence is what I would consider the mindset. Gravitas is a total approach for how to live with that mindset. And when I think about what are the outcomes I want for people, it is the 3 C's. And it's courage, compassion, and connection. Why are we doing all this work, right? Why go on this journey with me and go through this book? It's because I want you to be more courageous. I want you to be able to break out of your comfort zones, take risks. I want you to be compassionate, and compassion is for yourself and for others. Because if you look up the word compassion, it's empathy plus action, right? It's not
Yeah.
just I can sit inside the story, but I can take action. And I think self-compassion is a huge component of that. How many of us beat ourselves up every single day and we don't take inventory of our strengths? I always say things don't get easier, we get stronger. Now, when you have a setback, do you beat yourself up or do you do the Ted Lasso? You're a goldfish with a 10-second memory and you pick yourself up and say, I'm stronger because of it and I keep going. So compassion is the second thing I want for people. And then connection. And this one is really important to me. We seek connection with others, and historically it's about demography. Where did you grow up? Where do you live? Right? When we connect with people based on their strengths, what makes them who they are, we start to see people differently. And so it was really important in the part of the process, creating this new vocabulary for confidence wasn't just about ourselves, but it was about how do we evaluate talent? How do we evaluate people we work with, people in our families? I will tell you, one of my favorite things is someone wrote me saying, at Thanksgiving dinner, I didn't ask what everyone was grateful for. I asked everyone what their superpowers were. And it was so much more fun to hear our family members talk about their strengths, right? And so that connection component, we start to see ourselves differently, but we start to see other people differently too.
I love that. We are talking with Lisa Sun, the CEO, founder and CEO of the company Gravitas, and the author of the brand new book Gravitas as well. And so I want to make a comment now about the fact that these three C's, how they are about more than just ourselves, which helps get at this idea of the fact that there are strengths that we have that lead us to different forms or different types of confidence, if you will. And so I'd like to dive into that now and have you sort of unpack. Now I can't say unpack because we don't have time to unpack 8 of these things. You need to buy the book, everybody. But there are 8 strengths. So what I really want you to do is just sort of list them off so people get the sense of the breadth,
Yeah,
right, of
and
them.
Kevin, I should highlight this, which is, there are so many books about confidence, right? Why do we need another one? I will be open with you around. I asked that of myself 4 years ago when I started this process. And I said we would do it if we could do our own research. So we did focus groups and then we did 1,000-person quantitative study on confidence. And that's how we quantitatively validated that there wasn't just one type of confidence, that there were 8 forms of it. And they are leading, performing. By the way, those are the 2 that are most often written about, right? They're the ones that you can see. The
And
other,
that's why people talk about that, like executives need gravitas, and they're often about leading and performing. But there are
exact,
6 more. So tell us
yeah,
about the other 6.
achieving, that's a winner's mindset, getting things done on time and at a high quality level. Giving, supporting, collaborating, nurturing others. Knowing, which is you are the best researched, most well thought through person in the room. Creating, which is the one I have. These, I think a lot of immigrants do, frankly, which is you love to think about ideas, the future. You believe in things before you can see them. You create something from nothing.
We'll just
Self-sustaining.
stop. I'm going to stop right there. We'll get back to the list in a second. And this will not be helpful to those of you who are listening, but it'll be very helpful if you were watching just now, whether it's live or later. And that is Lisa, when you mentioned creating, and we didn't, if we were watching, we didn't even know it was one of your strengths because your face changed,
Yeah.
you lit up, and your countenance, if you will, was different. And so give us the rest, and then I want to come back to that point because I think
Yeah,
it's
no.
really important, because I think that once we figure that out, that will show up in all sorts of
But
ways.
that's the thing, is once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you start to light up inside once you know your strengths. Uh, Believing, which is, I call it the Ted Lasso. This is where positive intent, optimism, belief in the goodness of others and situations really powers your form of self-belief. And the 8th, which the fewest number of people have, frankly, self-sustaining. And self-sustaining is, I like myself. I don't need to impress you. I don't need external validation. I live free of external validation and connection to my self-worth. And this, by the way, is the quality most needed to deal with criticism or
Yeah.
loss. because you're coated in Teflon and you can still see yourself for who you are.
I can move on and we can go from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but most people have 2 or 3. My mom, by the way, has all 8. She took our quiz and she goes, "I have all 8." 2% of people have all 8. But it's not a personality test. It's a self-affirming inventory of your strengths. Think about the last time you paid yourself a compliment and really meant it, right? That's the point, is you can't fake confidence. Real confidence is an unshakable belief in what makes you uniquely you. And so that's why we went on this journey to define all 8 of these, because less than 20% of people have leading and performing. Does that mean we all don't get to be confident? Also, when someone tells you to be more confident, what are you really saying? Which of these 8 are you asking me to be, right? We just need to change the way we talk about that word.
Yeah, I completely agree. And by the way, when you do get your copy of the book and read it, you will learn, you will reaffirm what you have learned if you've been listening, which is that Lisa likes movies and TV, because she's made like at least 3 references already, and they're all through the book, some of which I'd recognize and some of which I didn't. But it's another thing that makes the book uniquely you, Lisa, and I think is one of the things that makes the book entertaining and interesting to read, because you're using examples that we can connect to, which I think is really, really great. So of the 8, really probably of the 6 that are the outside of leading and performing, is there one that you want to give us a little deeper dive into? Maybe it's self-sustaining because it's the least, but just pick one to just give us a little more flavor about what confidence can be beyond sort of the incomplete view that many of us have.
Well, Kevin, all 8 are valid. Let's be clear. I really feel strongly about saying all 8 are equal. Whatever combination you have, your confidence language is awesome, because that's who you are. I actually would love to talk about the 4 that my mother and I have had long discussions around, which are: most women have a high degree of achieving and knowing. So we get things done on time and we do it with a high quality of research and thoughtfulness. And giving and believing. That is, my mom says we're the doers who give out hugs. Her joke is, when tsunami happened, men make speech, women clean up the beach. Why I not get credit for cleaning up the beach? And if you look at the McKinsey Women in the Workplace report from 2021, companies made it through the pandemic because of female leadership, collaboration, cooperation. And yet HR scorecards may not give credit to those attributes, right? They were not created to incorporate those emotionally intelligent qualities and whatnot. And so one of the things in my book that I feel strongly about is, if so many of us test highly on those superpowers, how do we as society change the conversation so that those superpowers are elevated? And it's not just the person who stands on a stage and speaks up is the person that we look up to,
Right.
but we can look up to the person who has a high degree of knowing. The example, because you read my book, is in the movie Hidden Figures, right? Black women at NASA, they had no reason to have gravitas, but they had gravitas because their superpower was knowing. They were the only people who could do the calculations to get someone into space. And that's their source of self-belief. And that's why, by the way, it took so many years to give them credit for it, because we don't celebrate that as a society, right? They weren't the person on the stage talking about the results.
Right.
They were behind the scenes.
Well, so we can have a conversation about how we change that societally, and there's nothing wrong with that conversation. But in terms of this podcast, I really want everyone to be thinking about this in terms of, how can I change that on my team? How can we adjust the way we think about it? And it doesn't even have to be HR scorecards, or as you mentioned, although that certainly could be a part of it. But like, how do we as individual leaders start to make a difference and change the way we think about this on our teams? And I think it starts with understanding the ideas and the superpowers, the strengths that you talk about. When we think about the word confidence, even when we use the word swagger, which you used earlier, a lot of people are like, whoa, 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 Lisa, what about people being overconfident? And one of the things that you talk about in the book under each of the strengths is you sort of talk about the downsides of
Yes.
each of these, which is sort of that little too much is too much, right? So talk a little bit about, where people might be sort of stopping short of this conversation, because like, I don't want to be overconfident. I don't want to be that gal or guy. Talk
Yeah.
about that just a little bit.
Every one of these 8 strengths has a shadow side, right? And I always say each of them can border on, like, for example, self-sustaining, which is a quality that's, I like myself, I don't need to impress you. Well, that can turn to arrogance or standoffishness. And I think as much as we lean into the superpowers, we need to also understand the other side of the equation. And so I don't know if there's any overconfidence per se, but it's understanding your confidence language. What can it do for you? But also how can it hurt you? And that's all I want to highlight. Also, the other important thing of this is we're all still on a journey. As people age or they climb a ladder, they go from having 2 superpowers to 4 or more. And so, as you add new qualities to your leadership style, that's very powerful. So, if you score high on leading, right, you're a take charge, you set direction, you inspire followership. Maybe you take the Adam Grant, you add giving to it. And by the way, that warmth and that care that you add to your leading profile offsets any downside of, it's my way or the highway.
Absolutely. So
So they
there,
all
there are models
interact.
of influence that talk about strength and warmth, and when we have both of those, we're far more effective. And
We're more powerful.
and we can be influential with either, but when we put them together, it's
Yes. I
amazing.
think you
That's
saw that data set, right, in our quant where we said if you have giving and leading, you're 2 to 3 times more capable than the average.
So there's that. So you've mentioned this phrase like 4 times, and we can't finish this conversation about the book and about your work without talking about this for a bit, which is the idea of the confidence language, or our personal confidence language. You've used that phrase a couple of times. Tell us what that means real
The,
quickly.
your confidence language is your unique combination of these 8 strengths. And there's 256 combinations. So we're all quite unique. And one of the things I wanted to do, I do an exercise when I give speaking engagements around what are you the best at in the world? People don't answer this question well, right? I mean, when was the last time you were asked to talk about your superpowers? And so we launched myconfidencelanguage.com. It is completely free. I hope you do buy the book, but if you don't, you can take the quiz to discover your confidence language. I will tell you, so many people have come up to me after they've taken the quiz and said, am I really this powerful? I have 5 superpowers. I'm like, yes, the quiz is not wrong. And they said, maybe I'm under leveraging my power. I'm more powerful than I thought. I knew I'd have 2 or 3 of these, but this one, I'm so happy I took your test and I now know I have it. That means when I go into my evaluation, when I go into that next meeting, I'm going to feel stronger. One woman messaged me on Instagram who had taken it. She said, that was the confidence boost I needed this morning. That was the thing that I needed to remind myself before I went into this big meeting. And
Well, so
so,
here's the thing. Like, what it does is it gives us another set of eyes on ourselves. It gives us some awareness, because here's the thing: if I'm not aware of that, then I can't lean into it. I can't acknowledge it. I can't use it. Right. So I
yeah.
think that's incredibly useful. So the the very first thing I read in the book, and certain that I read to everybody, and the thing that's mentioned in when I introduced you, is about your work with women and your
Mm.
and really you've written this book in many ways around how to help women, right? And yet we've had this conversation about all of us, men and women. So but I wanted you to have a chance, if there's anything specific, to acknowledge that woman component of this.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you want to add some richness or some layers to what we've been talking about so far in relationship to that?
Kevin, I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of my speaking engagements are men, women, non-binary, right? There's actually the philosophy, the diagnostic, the test. It's gender neutral. Let's be clear. Everyone can benefit from it because taking inventory of our strengths, seeing other people for their strengths, knowing that confidence is a mindset and a choice, not a behavior per se, those are all universal ideas. I do think though that for women and I could have written the book for everyone, but for me, as I looked at the data sets, I realized that women were further behind in the journey simply because for so long we have not controlled the scorecard, right? The scorecards were not created by us or for us. And so the road is much longer for us to get to a place where we all feel good about ourselves. Everyone from the full-time parent, because as you know, it wasn't just about people in corporate environments.
Right.
We interviewed and surveyed women who are full-time parents. This felt like for me the greatest gap to close. Not because I don't love to work with men and non-binary. It was more that I looked at the data set and I realized the gap was much greater for female leadership.
Gotcha. And I appreciate that, you sharing that. So I hinted in the intro about the idea of how if we have greater levels of confidence, it can help our results, which we certainly have been talking about that. And I think everyone sort of intuitively knows that. And we've hinted at how we could think about this from our team's perspective. As a leader, since we're on the Remarkable Leadership podcast, having a conversation, what's the biggest lesson for us as leaders in terms of using these ideas or helping our teams with these ideas?
Yeah. Well, I think the first one is I find that the piece of feedback, be more confident, is anxiety inducing and ambiguous, whether you're receiving it or giving it. Okay.
It's
And
clearly ambiguous. I mean, without question, right?
it's ambiguous, but it's also it's anxiety inducing, or it's or we try to wave away the inner critic. Oh, I wouldn't have given you that assignment if I didn't believe in you. Well, what do I do with that, right? Like I don't believe in myself. So that felt performative to me. And so the biggest leadership lesson that I would want people to take away is be more confident isn't a helpful phrase. We can double click on that idea and say, hey, let's have a conversation around all your incredible talents and why I believe in you. That's number one. And number two, and because you are the highest achieving person on my team, or because you're the biggest giver, that's why I think you're perfectly suited for this, right? We can add dimension and richness to the conversations we have with ourselves, but also with our teammates and our colleagues that takes be more confident and starts to take the anxiety and the ambiguity out of it.
Yeah, there's anxiety in part because it's ambiguous, right? If we're not
Yes.
clear, like how can we know? I don't know what to do with that if I don't know what it even means,
You
right?
know,
So I think that's incredibly important, and I love that. And I
Kevin,
think,
sorry, I
go
didn't
ahead.
mean to cut you off,
No,
but
please.
you know, one of the biggest sources of anxiety people have is leveling up. So when people get a promotion, there's that healthy amount of self-doubt that happens like, did I deserve that? Right? Oh my gosh, I'm so scared now. I've got to manage 20 people and not just 5. And it's that moment where I want to be there for people to say, actually, look at your inventory of strengths. That's why you got it. And I don't want people to doubt the stepping up. Because how many times have people gotten a promotion and they go, oh my gosh, I got a promotion. Now I'm really on the hook. So there's moments like that where I'm like, you don't have to have those be such anxiety inducing events.
Yeah, a little moment of I need to push myself a little more. Nothing wrong with that, but where it gets in our way and really stymies us or stops us is what we want to avoid, both for ourselves and again back to our point a second ago about how what we may be doing unintentionally to not be helpful to our team members. And I think that's a really important point. So as we start to wrap up, Lisa, I have 2 or 3 more questions for you, and we're going to sort of leave the book. We're going to sort of leave gravitas and confidence for a second. And I'm going to ask you, Lisa, what do you do for fun?
So I do 2 things for fun. One is
Only 2, everybody.
oh no, I do many things, but one is I truly believe that once a week we should all turn off our devices and just be quiet with our thoughts. So I visit an art museum. I'm lucky. I live in New York City, so this is something that you can do that's lucky. But I go to an art museum for 2 hours every week. It's actually really fun. I walk around, I turn off my phone, and it's where I've come up with my best ideas, by the way, just because my mind is quiet and I have white space. And the second thing that might surprise folks is I love hip hop dancing. I love to hip hop dance. And so I go to my friend's studio, Anna Kaiser Studios in New York, and I hip hop dance 5 days a week. So for an hour, 5 times a week, I take dance class.
So I have had nearly 400 guests on this podcast. I have never had someone who said, I hip hop dance for fun, which is Awesome. Because now we can add that. Not only you're the first person that's been in Elle magazine that's been here, as far as I know, you are also the only hip hop dancer among those who've been on the show.
Kevin, if you follow me on Instagram, I post a hip hop dance on my stories once a week. I posted one yesterday.
There you go, everybody. There's your invitation to follow. So at this point, everybody, I'm connected with Lisa on LinkedIn only, where I'm guessing there's no hip hop dancing that happens there. Well, maybe.
No, I don't know if that's appropriate for LinkedIn. Okay. You've got to like know your audience. Know your audience.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. So I know, like me, you're a reader. So what's something that you've read recently or you're reading now, or something just that you want to share with us?
I'm just about to finish Asian American Dreams by Helen Zia. And I have to admit, I'm in my 40s. And as an Asian American woman, I did not know the long history of Asians in America. Helen Zia, she was the first Asian woman to graduate from Princeton as an undergrad in 1971. And in 2001, she wrote this history of the Asian American experience all the way back to the 1800s. And so I'm proud to say that I've read it now, but I'm also disappointed in myself that it took me 22 years after its publication to discover it and to read it.
Well, let's be clear, everybody. There are plenty of books that all of us would benefit from or like to read if we were aware of them. So I don't think you should give yourself too difficult. But that's one of the reasons why this show exists, everybody, because otherwise, without you having been on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, everybody, you might not even have known about this book, Gravitas. And in fact, if you're with us live, the book doesn't even come out for like 3.5 weeks. So like you are way ahead of the curve. There's no waiting 23 years to find the book. Like you can find it right now. So where can we learn more, Lisa, about you and about the book? And where do you want to point people? I mean, other than your Instagram page.
Yes. So
where can you learn more?
Well, the book is available wherever books are sold. And the more we can support local bookstores, the better, because we make most of our products in New York City. Gravitasnewyork.com is our website. You'll see a big red band at the top to click on to learn more about the book. And then if you want to take a preview of your confidence language, myconfidencelanguage.com is now live. And so you can go on, share it with friends, share it with your colleagues. I just had somebody Instagram message me saying that she had everyone at lunch on her team take the quiz together. And that was a fun team activity.
Love that. myconfidencelanguage.com. The book, again, is Gravitas, the 8 Strengths That Redefine Confidence. My guest has been Lisa Sun. Before we go, so first of all, thank you, Lisa, so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you. Before we go, though, everybody, I have a question that I ask all of you as listeners and viewers every single week, and that is this. Now what? What are you going to do as a result? Like, hopefully one of the things you'll do is you'll go to myconfidencelanguage.com and take the quiz while you await your book to arrive. But beyond that, what else did you take from this? Maybe you learned, I need to make sure I don't tell people to be more confident. Maybe what you learned is that you need to take hip hop dancing. Maybe what you've decided you need to do is to think about this idea of the deficit mindset. Maybe you need to think about the idea of confidence as a choice and make a new choice. Those are just a few of the things that come to my mind as we close this episode. But here's the thing: if as entertaining and engaging as I hope you have found this conversation, none of it matters unless you take some action. And I hope that that's exactly what you do. So everybody, thank you for joining us this week live or on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. You can go to remarkablepodcast.com to find out where you can listen. But like you can find Lisa's book anywhere fine books are sold, you can find this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. So I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll join us next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everybody.